All right, Pack. Gonna do it. Saratoga, dead. Tucky Downs, dead. Del Mar, dead. My bankroll, dead. So that means it's time for some Churchill Downs.
Yeah, I think that's the looks like the big stakes for stakes races on Saturday are of any place in the country. Everybody's pretty slow, but Churchill's the one place that does have some stakes. In a couple of winning your ins for the Breeders' Cup. Kind of an interesting little card. A lot of 2-year-old stakes races, which don't tend to be my favorite, but these kind of lined up sort of interesting.
Yep, and the meet just started. So, I watched some of the races today. Um, Noticed a real heavy speed bias, it seemed like. And it seemed like there was a rail bias too early on in the card. It seemed like it evened out a little bit more as the card went on. Um, but you definitely saw some of the, especially the Kentucky jocks, Flannery and Graham. I mean, they were just like trying to get to the rail. They were just sticking to it. So, one of the things that one of the hard things about doing stuff like we're doing here is we're taking a look at these races um, tomorrow, today, um, and our opinion can change wildly depending on what happens in the 5 or 6 races before we get to some of these races. So, um, especially with Churchill Downs, and I know you were talking about this, and I've noticed it. Chase has talked about it. We definitely noticed that bias seems to come into play a little bit heavier on some of these Kentucky tracks. Ellis Park uh, earlier this month or last month was 100% just speed, 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 speed all the time. Um, and I mean, we did have the Saratoga dead rail to deal with for a couple of days there, but I think definitely here at Churchill, it's very important to kind of see how the track's playing, because depending on how much rain they get, depending on how, um, you know, you just gotta have to watch the races um, before you kind of make any concrete decisions.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we're going to cover 7 through 11, but it's definitely one of those things. If you don't have any angles in the first, 6 races, just sit back and watch, see what's happening. I mean, I cap these with sort of a no bias. I probably, when I naturally cap, I cap with a bit of a speed bias just because of how I cap. But I didn't, if early speeds holding on real well, there's a couple of horses in here you could definitely move up, and I'll probably note those. There's some horses that don't really fit figs wise, but if that early speed is really holding on like it was today, there's some horses in here that could be kind of interesting. So do you want to get started here in race 7, the open mind? It's
Yeah.
125,000. So it's an overnight stakes with at 6 furlongs on the main. All of these are on the main. What were you seeing in here?
All right. So, and if you guys are looking for the first time, or you might notice, I'm gonna kind of keep the Brisnet up just so we can kind of scroll through and see some stuff. Pack is 100% on DRF stuff. So I might say some stuff, and he's gonna be like, "Well, what I see is completely different. More than likely, it's because we're looking at slightly different data." Let me move this whiskey out of the way because it's actually blocking some of the PP. Um, but and I've kind of broke this down in the video before, but at least the way I start to look at a race is always down here. This race summary. Um, Reason being, it just gives me a quick snapshot, real quick, of Brisnet's run styles and of I can just look at pace figures on a real broad scale. Now, obviously, you got to go back and you got to look at individual races. Horse, especially with lightly raced horses, you might see the first 2 3 times they go out show no speed, and all of a sudden the last 2 races they decided to start speed. Maybe they added blinkers. Who knows? Um, but at least this is these are 3-year old and up, so these are gonna be older horses. So this is gonna give me at least a bigger snapshot here. And what I do notice is it looks like we got a lot of push button horses in this race. And I mean, a lot of these are just real similar run styles. Um, Early on in the card, uh, definitely saw that um, pretty much every horse that won or placed had at least 6 early speed points. Means pretty much that the horses that were winning and placing had to be forwardly placed. Um, so in this case, I'm going to kind of uh, keep a little bit towards that. And there's a couple of horses here that definitely fit. One of the horses that I'm definitely interested in is going to be this 8 horse here, Ascot Day. Won last time out in an optional claiming, showed speed at Ellis Park, which we know it was gold. But comparatively on some of these figures, is definitely going to be really, really competitive with these other horses. Um, and once again, at least from what we saw today, and once again, tomorrow will be completely different. Run style definitely fits in with what we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problems with that horse whatsoever. The only reason I made that horse a B instead of an A was I didn't really know the jock, and I don't know, I didn't really know if he's somebody I can trust. He does not seem like a Churchill regular jock, so I was just kind of scratching my head at him a little bit. But I do agree with you from a pace setup. I mean, there are no closers in this field. Everybody is either on or near the pace. So the two horses that really jumped off for me were the 1 and the 7. Divine Queen is going to get the rail. Calvin Burrell is going to be on the rail, and the horse seems to be the horse for course here. 3 for 4 over the Churchill track. Horse is 5 for 16 lifetime. So the horse obviously really likes Churchill. Coming out of that Groupie Dow, which is a similar sort of class to this kind of a race, finished a really respectable second. It looked like that again. Ellis Park speed was golden, um, and yeah, so that horse kind of made a lot of sense to me. I'm getting told here by the Wolf that Declan Cannon is a regular at Churchill, so apparently I'm just a bit of an idiot. But the other horse. But the other horse I wanted in here was America's Tail, the 7. Um, the connections for me kind of jump off the page. Jose Ortiz is there for a couple of other mounts, but he hops on board this horse. Um, it, Trainer is really, really good on this type of a layoff, that 61 to 180-day layoff. And it's also a horse coming out of much, much, much tougher. Coming out of, the Madison, we ran a respectable fourth to some horses that are much better than I think you're going to face in here. And also coming out of the inside information where the horse won the inside information, which is a G2. This should be a much easier place than that inside information. So and honestly, the fig in the inside information, I don't know what Briz looks like, but on Bayer's scale, that towers over anything else anybody has run in the field here. Ran a 91, which should destroy this field if it runs anything back to it. And you're seeing a horse that, again, that similar sort of on or just off the pace type of running style.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, Jose Ortiz decides to show up to Churchill or anywhere in Kentucky and just wins however many races he feels like winning. Um, so he came to Kentucky Downs and just decided, hey, I'm only going to be here 4 out of the 5 days, I think, and hey, let's win more races than anybody else. Yeah, no, on the class standpoint, I am completely on you with this with 7. I think coming out of the inside information and Madison, I mean, none of these other horses, but uh, we got Honey Bunny is probably the only other one that's face even close to similar and got blown out by that competition. So um, yeah, I mean, I definitely think that the 7 is probably the horse to beat. Now, once again, this is like where we're gonna differ a little bit. Um, as far as the Briz speed figures, it's actually a little bit closer. And another horse actually that I was gonna talk about, and looks like Evil Bob Dole decided to jump in and mention it too, is the 6 horse Awestruck. Now, Awestruck is coming out of slightly easier competition here, but looking at the figures, seems to do his best running or her best running, excuse me, um, at 6 furlongs. tried it at 7 furlongs, regressed a little bit, not too much, but it seems that 6 furlongs do real well in the first or second 5 out of the 8 tries here at Churchill. I definitely think that once again this is another horse that if this decides to break down a little bit, I think this horse is going to sit just slightly off the pace. I don't think that this horse is going to exactly gun for the lead. Because I think that there's some horses here. I think like the 7 is probably faster. But I think the thing about the 6 and the 8 is I think both of them are going to sit just off the lead, and possibly be able to take it a little bit later. And actually, I misread. I think Eel Bob Dole and I were not on the same horse because he likes the 5 here, Headland. Anything in that one?
Yeah, I was gonna say just on your 6 before I jump onto the 5, with Awestruck. Awestruck was a horse I wanted to fade a little bit, just on the fact for 2 things. First thing, the horse is 1 for 7 at the distance. So, yeah, likes to hit the board at 6 furlongs, seems to be a good 6 furlong horse, but maybe for me more of an underneath on horizontal or, sorry, an underneath on verticals kind of a horse. The other thing was, only 2 for 8 across the Churchill surface, on the win angle, which is, not terrible, but it's not great either. Yeah, Arad Ortiz does take them out. I don't know if that's necessarily at Churchill an upgrade over Julian, but just a horse that I kind of went, boy, there's other ones in here that are a little more enticing. And when I look back at the figs, there's horses in here that can run sort of those 88 to 90 buyer point figs, and I'm seeing this horse kind of in the low 80s, that sort of 83, 84 range for a top. I think I have a feeling that Awestruck might be cut below some of the better horses in here. Um, yeah, and to kind of answer Bob Dole, on his 5. 5 I like a little more than the 6. Bays stays on here, coming out of a little easier, stepping up in class a little. But this is a horse that apparently loves going to the winner's circle. 6 of 12 lifetime, 2 of 4 at Churchill, and honestly, I think in the exact 9 of 12 times. So it's a horse you really have to use. Bays has been really solid last 3 times out. Got beat at last out by Ascot Day, who's in here. So yeah, definitely one that I want to use, and I would want to feature, and I think probably will be a little more forwardly placed than Ostruck. So if you're playing that game that geez, the pace just isn't coming apart, and you really need to be on the lead, Headland, the 5 is one that I think you really have to use. And let me make sure my mic's behaving itself here,
No.
but the other horse in here that I find really really interesting is the 3 Meadow Dance. On figs, this horse makes no sense. Just a massive cut below the rest of this field. But the 3 is going to be sent and going to be sent hard and is going to be on the lead. The other thing with Meadow Dance is Sean Bridgman is 3 for 3 up on this horse. All 3 wins have been up in 6 starts have been up with Bridgman up. So he's up again. They're going to go, they're going to be on the lead. And if this turns into a conveyor belt type track like it was today, this 3 might get real brave on the front end.
Yeah, I highlighted my boy Jose Valdivia here, rode this horseback at the Arlington. I forget what the heck they call it, but it's like their big 2-year-old race at the end of the season on December. So yeah,
Arlington something
yeah, it's like the
last.
Arlington like Washington Lassie or last. I don't. But yeah, so you trashing my boy Jose over here. Definitely taking note. But yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement. I think that the 2 outside horses, the 7 and 8, are the ones I'm going to want to use the most. I think, yeah, like you said, if you're looking at class, the 7 is going to be heads above the rest. Um, Oddly enough, normally when a horse is that much classier than the rest, Brisnet tends to like to give them a real high prime power number, but it seems like here, actually really in line, and at least per Brisnet, this is looking like it could be a very wide open race. I don't really see it that much just because of the fact that I do think that uh, class wise, I don't think that anyone's really close to the 7. The only thing that kind of does worry me a little bit is the layoff, but like you said, it seems like Bernard Flint is pretty good on this layoff, so it should not be an issue.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I pretty much agree with you here. I think this is, for me, the two races in the sequence that you wanted to get the widest were in the seventh and also in the 11th, the last race, that maiden. This race to me is one where, I don't necessarily want to be really heavy on the front end. I think you play it in a way um, that, you're going to probably more leverage. I mean, for me, it's the one, the seven, and I like your eight quite a bit as well. I think those are the three that I want to use the most heavily, but I definitely want to be involved with those other horses, especially in horizontals. If you're chasing this late pick five, just because I don't think you can really throw anyone out in here.
No, I agree. I think the seven is still the most likely winner, but I think you can make a case for 2/3 of this field. There's probably only a handful you can toss out. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think I'm going with the seven as my pick here, and the seven and the eight are probably what I'm going to use. I did on BP just mark down the one here. Um, Evil Bob Dole once again saying that the seven is going to bounce. So I think we got to drink anytime someone says the word bounce. And Pack over there, what you buy, Pack? You go out that Jefferson's Ocean at Sea, right? Oh yeah, I forgot the shirt. Yeah, fucking
You totally forgot the
Morticia.
shirt. I know Bob Dole's watching, so I wanted to
God
wanted to
damn,
plug his
for sure.
awesome shirt because I apparently I'm an idiot, and or I should say we're all idiots and didn't realize that Morticia was going to horribly romp. So yeah, I faded Morticia, and I have this shirt to deal with now.
Yeah, and that we're already getting comments that people can't watch without the wolf here, so people are missing the wolf. Shout out to
Oh,
the
uh,
wolf who's out with a
yeah,
bad
he's a
back
hurting puppy.
apparently. Apparently 30 hit him. 30s hit him real hard. Can't get up.
But yeah, I'm
We gotta
doing
get him one of those.
a little.
Oh yeah, look, you got
I was
your
gonna say a
little
little bit of
oceans.
Jefferson's Ocean Age. I don't know how well you can see it there, but it's pretty good stuff. Probably a little pricey for what it is, but it's quite good nonetheless.
I'm going to take my second drink out of the Polka Dot Taylor, a special Blanton's bottle here. And then when you're done pouring, why don't you start off here on race 8?
Yeah, race 8 is the Locust Grove, mile and a 16th, for 200,000. Yeah, in here, of any race in the sequence that I wanted to get the most skinny, this is the race for me at least. I think the two real standouts in here are My Lady Curlin, the three, and Escape Clause, the five. You get a little bit of different styles here. Again, if we're seeing where that's and I'm doing this really on a speed figs sort of world. But if speed's really holding on well, Escape Clause is your horse. She's coming out of some real classy races in here. Pretty massive step down, and she's been living in G1, G2 company against a late Midnight Bisou, Marley's Freedom. I mean, you name it, she's faced everybody, and she's just really the class of the field. 20th 34 lifetime, never run at Churchill, but she's a real classy girl, and she's I think she is the horse that makes the most sense. The other one that I want quite a bit of in here is My Lady Curlin. A little bit more of an upper, little, a year younger, a little less raced. But and probably won't be quite as forwardly placed. But she does have very much has a nose for the wire. She's won her last five straight. She's 7-12 lifetime, 1 for 2 over the Churchill surface. So she's another one that to me, she's coming out of some classier races, but not nearly as classy as Escape Clause. But Figs fit pretty well here. She might be that up and coming type of horse. And yeah, I mean, those are the two that I wanted to have the most emphasis on. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and important to note too about My Lady Curlin did beat Escape Clause last time out. So at Thistledown. So, I know it's a big thing that that our boy Pau Show likes to talk about is tandems, and looking at how how these horses race against each other. Um, so important to note, a horse is also on the what five race win streak. Um, I think that My Lady Curlin's probably going to be the horse to beat here, but depending on how speed is playing, I think Escape Clause is fast out the gate. So if speed is gold, and Tyler Bays is an idiot, and if the rail's playing good, and he's able to get the horse out and clear and onto the rail. I mean, he could have smooth sailing, especially since the one horse here, Pink Sands, is not going to be part of the pace scenario at the beginning. Um, Moonlit Garden probably doesn't want to be part of the pace scenario and is definitely not fast enough. Um, so I really think that uh, Escape Clause is going to have her way and is go ahead and get the lead. Um, there is a little bit of an issue. You know, I'm right there with you. These are the two best horses in this race. Um, if I had to kind of dig deep into the well, um, and look for another horse that I might want to use, um, roll up here, and we did talk about it real quick, but the one Pink Sands, um, didn't really run that great at the Chuvy. Um, did win a it looks like a listed stakes at Monmouth there before, just a name on a. I always forget the names of the names of stakes, but beat some decent horses. I mean, was the favorite there, but the horse has some class, and the reason why I'm interested in using the horse is because this horse is going to get the heck out of the way of this pace scenario. It's going to break, it's going to sit back, and there's a chance that this breaks down. This pace could break down, and if it does, I think the one is probably set up the most to pick up the pieces. The other closer in here is the nine, Rose of Malibu. I don't like the horse as much as I do um, the one here, Pink Sands. Um, but I think that if you're trying to build some kind of exotic, some kind of vertical here, um, depending on what the odds are, I mean, I think you might be able to get away with something like My Lady Curling and Escape Clause over like a Pink Sands, and just think, okay, these two are gonna be up here duke it out, and see if Pink Sands can pick up the pieces, get a piece of second. Especially because I'm gonna assume that both these horses are gonna be pretty short here, since they tower over the field here.
Yeah, I mean, I do tend to agree with you from a pace standpoint. I think Escape Clause gets out and gets loose. The only horse here that I can really see challenging Escape Clause early would be Skeptic, the four, drawn right inside, similar early pace. Now the problem there is the jock. You have Julian Leperoux up. He's never met a speed horse he couldn't strangle, and I would expect that he will do the same thing here, just like he did in the Summer Colony. They broke, and instead of going to the lead where he could have, he strangled the horse back and then tries to turn a speed horse into a closer, and that just doesn't work. You take the horse right out of its element, and happens to Julian quite a lot. I do like to pick on him about it. Yeah, I mean, and the other horse in here that if you had to get cute, that I would be a little bit interested in would be the seven. Go Google yourself. Now, if you made me go with a seahorse, oh, you were really waiting for it. What were you waiting for?
I was waiting for the two. I thought you were going to talk about the two, but go for it.
Nah, I mean, the only thing is here. Go Google yourself is the really outside drawn speed. I don't want a deadpan closer here, especially with how the track was playing. Chance that Go Google yourself can maybe sit just off some of the speeds, and if they do go a little stupid early, has that sort of first run closer type advantage. But I mean, I it would be a C at best. I really just want the three and the five here.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I said, I'm going to see how the track's playing. If the track is playing a little bit more fair, I might take a shot with the one, depending on what kind of odds I get. But if I'm playing something horizontally, I mean, you absolutely got to use the five in some way, shape, or form. Um, I might get cute and try and single the three here, but um, you know, oh, who is this?
That's
What?
Caleb.
Look at this! He's like, I've had enough. I've had enough slander of all the horses I like. I need to get in here.
I had to just jump in.
So what? Are we
So
wrong?
no, I think you're dead right for this race. Unfortunately, I have little to add. I think you and Mark both have it pretty well covered. I didn't miss the earlier discussion. I just jumped in about halfway through race 8, so I'm assuming y'all talked about the way the track was playing today at length already.
Yeah,
Yep.
Josh did a pretty good recap of how the track was playing, and kind of, with the fact that this is going to be the late pick five sequence. You should be able to sit back and watch how the track's playing. If it's the same as it was today, obviously rail speed was phenomenal, and it was a bit of a conveyor belt. You really wanted to be on the lead, and there were some horses that had no business holding on, that did. That 46-1 shot early was kind of the highlight there.
Yeah, so then y'all pretty much had it covered. I was playing most of the card today, and it was a good and bad day in terms of didn't hit anything huge, but got a lot of big prices in for a while. So it's nice that we get to watch a few races tomorrow before having to make a decision in this
Yeah,
sequence.
and that was that you getting yourself off the snide today, right? Was that at Belmont?
Yeah, that was at Belmont, thankfully. So
I just
had
noticed your shirt, Caleb.
yeah. So if I don't know if y'all can see it on the camera or not. So I tried to beat Zulu Alpha with Pillar Mountain, and all I got was a lousy T-shirt. And you know what? I'd
Yeah.
do it again. Pillar Mountain, you owe me one, and I'm waiting.
Dude, all I know is I'm way the fuck ahead on this. You guys got these like meme T-shirts. I got a fucking bottle of Blanton, so I think I'm a little ahead here on the giveaways there.
He's just saving his run for the Breeders' Cup. I'll be back.
Oh, jeez.
What you got going on there, Mark? That horse looks familiar.
Yeah. Does this look a little familiar? Yeah. I think you were also fading this horse as well, though. So I don't know if you can say too much, but yeah, goddamn Morticia, my least favorite horse in training.
Hey, at least I got half of it right since was it Alexandra didn't run a lick, so but that horse that was so speed favoring, which is like I said, a real good example of what we were talking about. It's like yeah, we're sitting here trashing the horse, but as soon as that horse went up to like 5 or 6 to 1, would it go off like 7 to 1, 6 to 1, Morticia?
Yeah, 6 or 7 to 1. I remember
Yeah,
you saying in
Yeah,
chat, going, "Hey, at that kind of a price, all of a sudden she's not a massive fade," and you were very right.
yeah, and then the way the track's playing, it's like okay, now you turn if you're telling me that that horse on a fair track was 3 to 1, absolutely toss it out. But on a speed favoring track at 5 to 1, like okay, let's go to the ATM and take some money out, you know?
Well, I also say that in that race, the other speed, I think either hit the gate or fell flat on its face, or the other speed did not break. So no one was looking at that race and expecting Morticia to be loose on the lead, which is what happened. And she got real brave on the front end. And I think if that other speed had broke, this would be a very different situation we'd be talking about. We were wrong no matter what, but I think there was some extenuating circumstances. Let's put it that way.
All right. Just to recap, Caleb, in case you missed it, we pretty much went with Miley Curlin escape clause in this race, and then Mark likes a little bit of Divine Queen, most of America's Tale, and a little bit of Ascot Day in seventh race.
in the first leg.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty similar to what I had. I had oh, I lied. It's not, but that's close enough.
What was there? Is there something else you liked in that first race?
It was hard for me to cap this car. I looked at this faster than I normally would, considering I was kind of crunched on time, and I did it right after like the day ended of today's races. So it was so hard for me to separate out the fact that today's inside speed was so good that I feel like I, subconsciously really slanted my picks towards horses that I thought could make the lead and then get inside. Um, I do like a little bit of Divine Queen. I don't mind that horse. It's probably going to end up somewhere in my ticket. America's Tail, I like as well. Only Great Stakes winner. Ascot Day. I kind of like. At 6-1, I like. If much shorter, I probably wouldn't. The only other horse that I'm looking to use would be both probably the 3 Meadow Dance and then the 5 Headland are both two I'm kind of looking at. Every horse in this race kind of looks the same to me as could make the lead, could press the pace. So I ended up going with I'll probably be pretty spread in this leg.
Yeah, it's always tough for me, and I talked a little bit about this, but like when I'm looking at the run styles of the horses, usually like you'll see a lot of them will be pretty similar, like especially like on Brisnet, you'll have couple P's, couple E's, EPs, whatever. And this is legitimately like all EP horses, all around 5 or 6 speed points, and it's just like it's gonna be like the pace scenario, like I have no clue. Like, there's a chance that Upset Brewing grabs the lead, and then like I have no idea like what the heck happened, because if Upset Brewing gets the lead, then I got to change completely everything else I'm going with here. But yeah, this was kind of weird. And the only thing that I did see a little bit about Divine Queen growing a little bit, the one does have one of these angles that uh, I know Chase, the wolf, definitely likes to talk about, which is when you get this lone run style, you get in this case we got the lone P horse here. Um, Divine Queen's probably going to get the right trip, because the Divine Queen's not going to be part of this early pace whatsoever. So I really do like the fact that Mark kind of called this out as a horse to use here. A speed figure wise, I don't. I mean, at least on Brisnet, um, has a couple of races that are close, but um, yeah, with the good trip, has definitely has a chance to go ahead and take that one.
Now they
Um,
have Divine Queen as a presser. What do they
no,
have Meadow Dance as?
the
Just
rest of the
because I
horses are
would.
EP. All the
Okay,
rest of them.
I was wondering if Meadow Dance would be an E or an EP because I think I don't see a situation. As long as everybody breaks well, I think Meadow Dance gets the lead here. Whether or not Meadow Dance can carry that lead, I think is a different story. But I think Meadow Dance is probably the quickest horse in here. Again, though, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, and it depends on what pace figures and speed figures you look at. Honestly, I've noticed for the most part when Timeform says, "Hey, this is the speed," it usually matches up with Brisnet. The thing is I think that these horses are all so close, that the pace figures are going to be all over the place. Because if I was looking at this, just off the top of my head, it could be Upset Brewing who grabs the lead, could be Ascot Day, could be America's Tale, could be Meadow Dance, um, and it just I don't know, the pace scenario for this like made it really hard, um, and that's kind of why I went with the outside horse, the 8, and the 7, because at least I know that um, when it comes down to it, they are going to be able to decide, okay, do we need to move up, or do we cut to the rail and kind of sit back a little bit, sitting on that outside post. But more than likely, I think that one of these inside horses are going to grab the lead. So
We want to. I mean, Caleb jumped in. Do we want to head right to race 9 and make him give us some thoughts on the Pocahontas?
yeah,
All right, let's do it. Race 9 in a predictable field of 2-year-old fillies that have only raced once or twice. So this was a pretty interesting race. I gotta check my notes here for a second. Yeah, so I narrowed it down to 3 horses that I was most interested in. I haven't actually begun to think about ticket structure or anything like that. And the horses that I was kind of looking at, well, I guess before we get that, when you get to these 2-year-old stakes races, you don't have a lot of established form to go off of most of the time. Normally, I wouldn't use a maiden against winners for the first time, but in a race like this, you kind of have to, So what I'm kind of looking for is, the vast majority of 2-year olds, especially fillies, win their first race and second race in wire to wire fashion. It takes some time for horses to learn the ability to pass. It takes some time for them to learn how to take some dirt and get some kickback and not quit running. So I'm looking for a horse that has some speed because you don't often see dead closers win these races, but also one that has preferably shown an ability to not just have to have the lead in order to win, as well as a horse that, hopefully, is proven, around a route if we could find one. That's not the case here for most of the horses. But, finding a horse that at least is, bred to go the distance or at least go 2 turns is kind of my next staple. So, kind of with that in mind, I ended up looking at the 1 Chatelaine, the 3 Portrait, and the 4 Lazy Daisy. All these are horses who did not necessarily need or get the lead in their maiden victories. They're all horses that do have some tactical speed, um, and that do seem like they have some outside shot to be able to get the distance or outright can get the distance. Uh, I was a little bit concerned about Chatelet getting debuted for a tag for the Pledger Barn, I think it was. Um, the fact that Maker and David Staudacker, I'm not familiar with the owner, but it's not often you see a 2-year old that only sold for 80,000 debuted for a $75,000 tag and actually get claimed. That's pretty unusual, especially claiming off of Pledger at that stage. So while debuting for your tag could sometimes be looked at as a negative thing, the fact that it was actually claimed by a very sharp claiming trainer and maker, and gets an inside draw here at the rail, which was just absolutely golden today, with pedigree of declaration of war by Warfront, and then a tap at Damsires. Horse should be able to run all day. Looked good winning the debut at that maiden claiming race at Saratoga. So 10-1 is a pretty generous price. Leperoux is in Kentucky, so I'm a little more forgiving to have him on some of my mounts. He actually kind of crushed one of my tickets today when he made the lead from the 12 hole on a horse that shouldn't be on the lead, and just broke my heart in the, I forget what race it was, maybe the 4th race today. So I'm interested in him. Be interested to hear what you guys came up with.
Yeah, I very much agree with you on the 3 Portrait. I think Portraits, and I know you mentioned the 3, bred to kind of go all day, tap it over Bellamy Road, showed some early speed, and has shown the fact that I mean, can pass horses, and I think that for young horses is really important. I also think it's pretty impressive if you go back and watch Portraits last. The fig came back 81, which I think is the strongest dirt fig in this field, but won by 12 and a half lengths, drew away easily. Very, very, very impressive. Obviously, a lot more in the tank with that one. So, of course, I'm not worried about stretching out, and it was kind of impressive. The other 2 that I really want are the 6 and the 7, Morning Gold and British Idiom. Now, I think a lot of people are going to look at the 6 and go, wait a second, the horse had 2 starts at turf at Saratoga. Why are we backing a horse that goes turf to dirt? The reason that you do is that this time of year with 2-year olds, there are no distance races on the dirt, especially up at Saratoga. All of the dirt races for 2-year olds that are maidens are going to be run at 5.5, 6, and 6.5 furlongs. So if you want distance, you have a horse that wants to go a little further. You have to go out of the turf. Now, the first time Dylan Davis was up, obviously they thought something of the horse, but it not as much as the second time out where Jose took them out. So the 6 was really kind of really piqued my interest in here. Jose comes down to stays up on this one, and I think this is another horse that has shown the ability to. If you look at that Dylan Davis first start, has shown the ability to pass horses as well, and probably if it got a better ride from Dylan that first time out, would have broken its maiden the first time out. Other horse that I want in here is some British Idiom. Arad's, JJ didn't obviously travel, so Arad's getting this mount. Ton of early speed with this one. Going to be on or just off the pace here, I would assume. And a rad up for Brad Cox is a massive, massive win percentage angle, hitting at 30% this past year for $4.30 ROI. So I would imagine a rad mount Brad Cox horse. Now, not a big purchase price. They only paid 40K for this horse, but one at first asking in a maiden special weight up at Saratoga at 6 furlongs, which is no easy feat. So a bit of again, same Tappa as well. So you're assuming this horse can run all day. Kind of an interesting bottom end. Out of Mr. Sakaguchi, which is I think more of a turf influence. It's not one I know super well, but again, the connections here are also super interesting. It's both Michael Dubb and the Elkstone Group, which are chronic owners. They have a lot of very, very good horses, and there are people who will, both of them, bend over backwards to buy out a portion of a horse to be involved in something that's live. So the fact that they're shipping for this race says quite a lot to me. I mean, I realize Brad Cox is a Kentucky trainer, but I would imagine British Idiom is quite live as well. And I think that horse actually knocked me out of a pick 5, if I remember right. So I think horse owes me some money on top of that.
You probably deserved it.
Yeah, I definitely deserved it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one horse in here that I want the most of is, I know we're looking at a horse that won on the turf, but there's one thing that we can say, that the horse has gotten the mile and 16th, where the rest of these horses have only sprinted. So while he got the mile and 16th on turf, which she, sorry, uh, you know, go back and forth on what's more tiring, turf or dirt. I mean, it depends on the horse. But also going to be getting Lasix for the first time. I don't know. I definitely think that this she's going to get the distance. Don't have to even think about it now. Granted, we have a lot of we have the Tappet influence here on the 7, as well as the 1, and I don't think, oh yeah, the 3 as well. We have Tappets out of
Eight
there,
as well.
and 8. So we do have a lot of horses here with that, and actually the 8 is the other horse that I'm a little interested in. A lot of with Steve Asmussen, Carlos Santana. Um, but yeah, I definitely think that the 6 horse is going to be where most of my play is going to go through. Um, it was, even though its win was gate to wire, if you look back at her first time out, she was able to pass 2 horses, and did make up ground. Was behind a little bit and made up ground. So I definitely think that the 6 horse is probably, and I don't know, I haven't looked at the morning line, but it's probably going to be the favorite here.
Yeah, 3-1 is what they're showing as the morning line. So I would assume that the 6 will be, with the local connections, will be probably the morning line.
Yeah, probably going to be the morning line favorite. I mean, you do have the 2 Brad Cox horses, which are going to also take money in the 7. And but like I said, the kind of slightly outsider horse, which I kind of want a little bit of, I think, is going to be this 8 horse, Lotta Ott, who has shown a little bit of speed, but once again has shown that the ability to pass horses in his last win. But is also going to be forwardly placed, which I think, if we looked at what happened yesterday or today rather, which probably will be yesterday, it's important to go ahead and be forwardly placed. So those are going to be the 2 I use. I don't really know. The interesting part about this race to me is in another angle, since I have to speak for the Wolf, since the Wolf is not here. Another one of the angles that the Wolf likes to look at, specifically with Briz, when you get these speed points here, you see that there's more than 3 horses that have a 6 or higher. It tends to make you think that there's a chance that this thing can just break down. We have a lot of sprinters, or at this age, most horses are only sprinting. So there's a chance that this whole thing falls apart. And if that does fall apart, I think if you take Caleb's approach, looking at something like the one horse, uh, who once again came from slightly off the pace and won. I think that that might be a good strategy to take here, because this race is a little borderline on how the pace is going to kind of shape out. But I still think that 6 definitely going to
Yeah, I was going to say one other horse in here that I find a bit interesting that we haven't mentioned yet, and is one that I want a little of, probably as a B, is going to be the at 5 to 1, and I bet you the horse probably ends up quite a bit taller than 5 to 1. Is the 5 horse Blood Curdling? Horse comes out of a race at Colonial on the 15th of August, won by 11 lengths. And if you watch the backtrack of that race, horse just kind of went, 3 wide at the quarter and just walked away from the field. So it's one of those ones that this fig is going to come back light, because of just sort of how it happened, and it was very much underhand, and did so easily. And you actually got as a comment in DRF driving, which you don't very often get, especially on sort of a 2-year-old. Paid big money. They paid 325,000 for this horse. It's a Giant's Causeway out of a Street Cry dam. So the distance pedigree is definitely all over top and bottom. And but it's kind of smaller connections. It's a Dane Kloblowski trained horse. Not super known as a trainer, but Corey Lannery hops up on this horse. So you're getting those Kentucky connections. You're getting a real solid jock up. So it's one that I kind of went, geez, that's a horse that's going to be left behind on the board. I mean, you're getting 5 to 1 morning line. I bet you this horse goes up to 8 or 9 to 1. And it's a horse where with a lot, again, like a lot of these, we're looking for that potential. It's pretty interesting one for.
Anyone else sad that the blood curdling isn't out of curling?
It should be. You're right.
Yeah, you're right. It should be.
Yeah, I guess my thinking in this race was that when I went through this sequence the first time, I had a hard time getting away from a lot of favorites. I think whether you do. Mark must have a wireless mic.
Yeah, he's over there. He's over there fucking making a drink, like fucking pouring all this ice in there.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. But I thought the sequence looked like there's some favorites that are going to be pretty hard to get away from. This was one of the races I thought you had a decent chance. So that's kind of why I was looking more towards some prices here. I think the 6 and 7 both look very good. I'm going to need Cox to have a good day if I'm going to have a good day, because I found myself on at least one of his horses almost every race. And the 6, that's a great point about the distance being offered on dirt races for 2-year-olds. I didn't even think about that. They'll both probably make my ticket in some form or fashion. But there's enough here that I'm going to look towards some of these off the pace types. And, my off the pace type, outside of the one that I'm a little interested in is this 4-horse coming in from California. If you followed California racing at all this summer, well, God bless you for one. But for 2, Del Mar, the rail was not where you wanted to be in pretty much any dirt sprint. It had a very low win percentage, going one turn at Del Mar. This Lazy Daisy horse looked very good, breaking her maiden at first asking, and then was stuck on the rail in that Del Mar debutante race that was won in pretty much blowout fashion by Bast. Considering that she didn't run that badly, I mean the winner was clear by almost 9 lengths, so she ran 4th, but she was only about a half length back from 2nd. Abel Cedillo, the one good thing is if you haven't been watching California racing is that he's really a good rider out there. He, been getting a lot of O'Neill's mounts as he moved over most of his stable from Golden Gate to Del Mar for the past meet. And I think he was probably the 3rd or 4th leading rider after some of the big names like Pratt and Drayden. Good rider, so he's one that I think is going to get ignored based on some of the more flashy, 10 length maiden scores here in this race. But I think this is one that she does have kind of the right run style, and I don't know that Abel's going to really have the track figured out because he has many mounts today. So if it is playing a little bit quirky, that could work against her. But I think you'll get every bit of the 8 to 1 morning line on this horse that is probably going to get an honest pace to run at.
Yeah, and when you're talking about pace, one of the hard things about these 2-year-old races is when you only have two horses that have run 3 times, it's hard to understand like exactly what kind of run style or pace you're going to get in some of this. Um, which is why Caleb's point where it's like, all right, just look to see, did this horse pass other horses? Great. That something that most of these horses haven't done. They've only won on the lead. Um, it's important to take a look at stuff like that, especially with these very, very lightly raised horses that we're having in this. Um, so yeah, and looking a little bit more, the more that you were talking about that 4, the more I kind of was liking it. So I definitely think I'm a little bit with you here on this 4. Yeah, it looks like the second place horse finished 8 3/4 behind, and what did Lazy Daisy finish? What, 9 1/4? So a half length back. So yeah, definitely is going to be a horse to look at here if we're going to be talking about something coming from off the pace.
We want to get on to the next race where we have the world's fastest horse.
The world's fastest horse in what looks like on paper to be a complete pace meltdown. Yes, why don't we take a look at this
Is
one?
Morticia running?
Oh, ouch, ouch!
uh,
That's just fresh. Yeah, so in the next race we have the Iroquois G3 $200,000 Iroquois winning your in for Breeders' Cup Juvie, and by the way, the previous race was also a win in your in for the Breeders' Cup Philly Juvie, but yeah, it going a mile and 16th on the main here. And you have a horse by the name of Dennis's Moment, the 8. Everybody's known this horse was a monster for quite some time. In the Churchill race, Clipped Heels lost the jock. The horse was bet pretty well that day. Went up to Ellis Park for because of the how strong their maiden program is, and popped a 97 Beyer. It's the fastest Beyer speed fig for a 2-year-old in the past, like it's something crazy like 7 or 8 years since McLean's Music ran a 104 or whatever McLean's Music ran. Horse won by 19 1/4 lengths. If you watch the race, it's an absolutely one. It was a two. It was a two. There were two separate races going on. There was the race that Dennis is.
there it is, number one, finally
Oh,
happened.
did it
There we
finally
go.
go? Finally won. Okay.
Yeah, which is weird.
But
Those was
yeah,
the two of us, and you talked for way longer. I don't know what the heck was going on there.
go figure. But yeah, I mean, Dennis's Moment was in a completely separate race than the rest of the field. Absolutely just demolished this field, and it was amazingly impressive doing so. Romans has been stating for since the spring that this is the best horse in his barn. Period. Best horse. So what's going to end up happening here is obviously we're going to have a pace meltdown, and the horse is gonna get rolled over late. But yeah, I mean, at least on my tickets, Dennis's Moment's a single A, and I don't have any B's behind.
So the funny thing, and I remember this, I forgot what I was watching. I don't remember if I was watching TVG or if I was watching the simulcast show. But I'm sitting there, they're interviewing Dale Romans. He is just like, I love this horse. Best horse I've ever trained. He's just fucking talking it up. And what the fuck happens during the race? Fucking loses the rider. Done. So, yeah, looking now the Briz speed figures, I tend to be more of a pace first person, so um I don't take these speed figures as gospel whatsoever. But oddly enough, that the 95 that Briz gave him isn't even the highest speed figure in this race, which is kind of funny. But yeah, if you haven't watched this race, like, you got to go back and watch. It's just crazy how this horse just pulls away at the end. The comment just says demolished field. So absolutely is exactly what the horse did. The more important thing, at least to me, when looking at this horse, when looking at the Brisnet figures, the late pace figure is way higher than the early pace figure. So even though the horse is listed here as an E4, my guess is the um, horse kind of just was given the lead and just pulled away late. So I think that this is probably gonna be one of those push button horses. If these other horses do go in front of it, um, hopefully Irad. Well, luckily Irad's aboard, so we know what his favorite move is, which is to rate a horse. So my guess is that this horse is going to stay out of trouble, and is probably like actually going to be the most likely win. But hopefully Caleb has a different take that is not involved with this horse.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point about the speed figures on the 8 Dennis moment. Because, when I looked at the buyer, that thing just screams off the page. I think he got a 97, and the next highest buyer was maybe 80 in this field. I mean, it was not anywhere even in the atmosphere of where the 8 horse, was running if you buy the buyer horse, the buyer number. But you're right. If you compare it to the Briz fig, the numbers tells a much different story. I don't have the time form in front of me, but one thing I always like to do when I see a pretty big discrepancy in figures, or I see a figure that doesn't seem quite right to me, is to check other sources, see what the horse ran on time form versus Brisnet versus buyer. Generally, 2 out of the 3 are going to roughly agree with what it ran, and those are usually the ones I'm going to lean towards. In general, I trust buyer more so than I trust the Brisnet speed figures. I like time form speed figs a lot as well, but I'm always skeptical when I see a horse win by 20 lengths. It makes me wonder, did this horse beat anybody? I mean, yes, he ran fast, but he didn't necessarily run quick. I mean, he went 22 and 4, 45 and 4, going 7 furlongs. Ellis Park is generally pretty kind to speed. I'm not saying that he's not the quickest horse, but he hasn't run the quickest opening fractions compared to some of these other horses. There's a few others in here who do have, you know, 22 flats or sub 22 speed, even out to that opening quarter. So it will be interesting to see. He got a high speed number because he came home very fast. It'll be interesting to see, how the race plays out, because there is a ton of speed drawn in here. So it will be something to watch for, to see how the 8 Dennis moment really responds to other pace pressure, which he really never got in that romping victory, or if he has to rate. Romans was excited for this horse. He typically knows when he has a live one on his hands. So I do think that he's probably the real deal. He's not a horse I'm going to let beat me. But there's enough question marks that, at 9-5, if you can get that, that seems like a gift. I think he's likely to be closer to the 6-5 range. He might even be shorter. So he's a horse I'm going to use. But again, I don't feel great about it after 120 length win at a bit of a smaller track with a bit of a slower lead. It just I'm a little bit scarred from Hidden Scroll or something to that effect. But it does leave me. I'm going to be looking for other options. He might end up as a lone A, but I'm going to be looking for some other horses to use with him as well. A couple of the ones I did end up looking towards were the 3 and the 4. The 3 horse in particular is one that I like, just given the run style. If you assume that the 8 horse loses this race, it's likely going to be because there's a wicked pace up. So I'm going to be kind of deferring to horses who are going to be able to come from off the pace, or have proven they can come from off the pace. This 8 horse has arguably some of the best local Kentucky connections for the track, with Eddie Keenely and Corey Lannery. Lannery is notorious for giving horses really good ground saving rides and staying on that rail. The rail was golden today. This horse has a win over the local track. Pedigree suggests that the distance really shouldn't be an issue. More than ready. Offspring typically don't mind going a route. It's gone west on the bottom side. And this horse looks like one who wouldn't mind an extra ground. So this is one that I do like to use underneath as he stretches out here. Another one I'm a little interested in is the 4 horse, Rowdy Yates. And I think this horse could potentially be the quickest horse in the race. The 10 horse also looks pretty quick, although ironically enough, he's never made the lead. Given that outside draw. I'm sorry, not the 10 horse, the 9 horse, Lebda. But yeah, the 4 horse could be your speed of the speed in terms of getting out front first. The horses ran 21 and 4 two back, 22 and 2 last time. Those are both honest fractions, more than honest fractions, and a horse is less than a length away from being undefeated. Asmussen and Tyler Bays. Tyler Bays gets the track today. I was watching a couple of his rides, and yeah, he didn't win every mount he had, but he understood that inside and speed is where you wanted to go. I mean, he was hustling his mounts out of the gate. He was really giving them an aggressive ride early, and had a couple of longer prices hang around, and for a lot longer, and even hit the board in races they probably had no business even being in. So this is one where I am a little concerned about the distance on the pedigree, but just watching his races and reading his running line acts like the distance shouldn't be a problem. And if for some reason this 8-horse Dennis Moment is not the horse that he looks to be on paper, then I think this 4-horse really could be the quickest of the rest and might beat them all to the punch, turning for home.
Yeah, important to note about the 3. In case you've never seen the name of the horse was previously named Noose. Just in case you don't recognize the name Scabbard. And then last race, Bob Dole in the chat brings up that the horse got stuck a little bit on the rail, was inside of a Green Light Go who won, and there was definitely a day that you didn't really want to be inside. So um, that might flatter. I think if you're looking outside of this 8-horse, which with the amount of speed that's here, could be a good decision. I definitely think that this 3 is probably going to be live here, even though the figures are a little bit lower than some of the other horses.
Yeah, just to add a little bit on Dennis's. Well, let me add a couple things. First thing with Dennis's moment, the reason he's getting such a big high figure is that come home time. He was a sub 22-second last quarter, which is for a 2-year-old pretty much unheard of. That's pretty moment. The thing that's going to be the scariest thing with Dennis's moment, and again, I'm probably going to use him as a single A, is the fact that the speed of the race, I think, comes through Juggernaut, the 7, who's drawn immediately inside. So Dennis's moments probably will not inherit the lead, and will definitely not inherit any easy lead as he did in his first race out. So can he pass horses? Can he deal with the fact that there's a lot of pace pressure early and inside? Is going to be, something that he's never had to deal with before. And again, I completely agree with Caleb. The number 3 horse, Scabbard, is the horse that if you think that there's a lot of early pace, which there is, and if you think there's a chance this falls apart, which is we can have that conversation. I think the 3 Scabbard is the one that makes the most sense. Has come from off the pace both times, run some decent figs. Horse is definitely getting better, some good local connections, and there's definitely a lot to like about the 3 Scabbard here.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's always tough with I said before, it's always tough with these lightly raced 2-year-olds to kind of get an idea of the pace pressure or the pace scenario here. Um, I know the Wolf once again not here. Gonna take a look. We have these E8, E8, EP8, and another 6 here. A couple 6s. I mean, this does scream pace meltdown. So if I had to, the reason why I actually like Dennis's moment a little bit more is because of all the other speed in here, and because of that come home time that we talked about. I think that given uh, the pace scenario that he was just given the lead, and if you look on Briz, he's got -1C and 2C markings here, which means that Briz considered this to be a very slow pace for the final time. My guess is that this horse doesn't need the lead. Just show up as an E4, but got one race of record, and the second one, he clipped heel, or the other race he clipped heels. So I definitely think that the 8 is still going to be the the horse to be here. But my guess is if you were going to be looking at this race, you're going to want to look for a horse that's going to be slightly off the pace, and especially at the
Yeah. Agree with everything you said here, Josh. Just stupid question because I don't really know the backstory. Scabbard, the three, the name change. Does anybody know why that happened? I don't think I've ever seen that the Jockey Club allow that. Seems sort of odd. I didn't know if there was some context.
I mean, the horse was named Noose.
Yeah, but they allowed it first time around. I mean, it was approved as a name. I get why that might not be an okay name, but
There
they
was an
approved.
article and Twitter uproar, so they changed it.
Okay, valid point. We want to hop onto the 11th.
Yeah,
Sure.
let's take a look at this last maiden race. We talked about problems looking at races with lightly raced horses. We have some horses here who have not raced. So we're looking at a mile here, 2-year-old race, maiden special weight. Taking a quick look at here, the pace scenario is going to be a little murky, just because we have such few stuff to go on. We have a bunch of horses that are listed as NAs here. If we look back, I don't know, a lot of these horses seem to have run pretty similar races. I mean, what you guys come up with anything here to differentiate any of these guys?
I don't want to necessarily say differentiate here, but this is of any race on this card. I think I mentioned it right at the beginning. The first in this pick five sequence, the 7th and the 11th are the two races that I wanted to have the most spread on. I think this is a race that you hope to kind of get live and be cute live here, so that you have a lot of spread in this last race. Take advantage of hopefully catching a price in here. I think if you look at the morning lines on these, you don't see any crazy high morning lines with with the exception of like the Dwayne Lucas Firster. I think there's a lot of horses in here that can win this, and I think you have to be a little spready here. I ended up 3, 5, 11, 12 as A's. I want a little bit of everything. I want some local connections, and I think, but there's no one horse in here that I went, oh man, there's a horse that that's the horse. I think there's a lot of these that are very, very much alike. And I mentioned the Dwayne Lucas horse. I had to make the horse a B just because I got burnt 3 times at Saratoga with that. So I think there's definitely a lot of horses you can make an angle for here, and you don't have a lot of form to go by, and don't have work. So um, this is one where you want to be a little spready.
Yeah, I completely agree that this is a wide open affair. I agree so much that I used 3 horses and they weren't any of your 4. I do have the 11 and 12 down as first pass Bs. I love Asmussen's second time out, especially with juveniles. That's always an angle I look for. And the 12 horse also, Lannery sticks, and the horse ran a pretty good race last time out at Ellis Park. So those are 2 that I did like. The 3 I ended up using as well as the 1, the 9, and 10. The 1 Continental Clash is coming out of the same race as the 12 for Strike Appeal. They were about even, roughly even. The 1 was a length or 2 off and had to take up pretty hard turn going into the turn, as they were coming for home. Lost a lot of momentum, and the horse never really started picking up ground or not even really passing horses, once he lost momentum. So it's not like I'm saying this horse was going to win had that not happened. But 2-year-old horses are often pretty immature, and a lot of times they have one thing that doesn't go their way and they just quit. And that's what I'm starting to think may have happened to this horse here, is that he got bumped, he had to check, and just couldn't really get back onto his stride, and then just kind of, went through the motions for the rest of it. Um, I'm not familiar with the jockey, but apparently it is someone that Romans uses frequently.
Romans loves Chuan.
Yeah, there we go. I mean, I'm looking at Brisnet here. It shows 20 mounts the past 60 days, winning 20% jockey trainer combination. So the fact that he comes, for this mount, and I only capped the last 5 races, so I don't know how many other rides he has today. It's the first one I've seen. I was interested in that. Plus, the way the track played today, the rail is a good place to be. So I did like the one. I used also the 9-horse Hillbilly Deluxe. This is a horse that's 10-1 on the morning line, and there's nothing that really jumps off the page at me about this horse, other than the fact that he ran third in his debut, um, and the horse that beat him came back to win next out. This horse then came back in a race that was washed off the turf and ran second by less than a length. It's fair to kind of knock the quality of that competition. It was probably supposed to be mostly turf horses at that point. But these are 2-year-olds. It's a sprint. A lot of times, there aren't established turfers or established sprinters at this stage. So even though it was a race that was washed off, it still had 10 years. I like the fact that he improved that second time out. And Jimmy Graham's been up for Darren Miller once in the past 60 days and win. So I do like that as well. Palace Malice has been pretty respectable with juvenile starters, and there's a lot of stamina on the bottom half with the European pedigree. So I'm interested in that, if he can potentially make the lead here, because it is a pretty murky pace scenario. But if he could get out front, I do think he's one I'd be interested in. And then the last one was just a 10, Celtic Mischief. It's tough to really ignore Brad Cox anywhere, especially in Kentucky. We don't have workout reports. We don't have a lot else to go off of. But Into Mischief is a very hot, sire right now. It's getting 15% with first-time out starters. The Dam has 6 starters, 2 of which have actually won as a 2-year-old before. 4 winners out of 6 starters. The horse sold for $450 grand, so clearly impressed some people at the auction. Those aren't stats I really weigh a ton on their own, but they come together to tell a pretty compelling story in addition to the strong trainer stats. Drew is one of Cox's go-to riders, along with Bridge Mohan, so there's enough here. I like the workout pattern. The horse, some pretty evenly spaced works. I'm not a huge time guy, but without workout reports, I would rather see a work that's 4 furlongs and 47 and 3 than 4:52. So the works have been respectably quick, and of all the first time starters, this is probably who I'd want to use the most.
Yeah, I'm right there with you with that with the 10. I feel like you can't ignore Brad Cox, first time starter in Kentucky. I think that you're going to have to use that horse. One horse that we didn't really talk about that does interest me a little bit is the 3-horse Sprawl. It's a Bill Mott horse, which we know he tends to like to take his horses off real slow. Um, ran in that Godzilla blowout, that a real impressive maiden win that Godzilla had at Saratoga. But once again, we don't have workout reports like Caleb was saying. Did fire a bullet last time out. And if you just kind of compare the other works the horses had, it seems like this is, a little bit faster of a time than the rest of his works. Was a bullet here at Churchill. So I think that this horse is sitting on a pretty good effort. It's hard to tell. Mott usually probably wants like 3 or 4, like third or fourth start is usually when you're going to want to try and bet one of his horses. But with the amount of real lightly weight raced horses in here, I think that Sprawl is going to be a look at too. And then the other horse, we kind of mentioned, I think you mentioned the 9, Hillbilly Deluxe. Is going to be another horse I like. Improved a little bit last time out. I was going to stretch out a little bit, out of Palace Malice. He's got curling, so, running a mile, not going to be a problem. This isn't really like sprinter bred. So really kind of interested to see what this horse does here, third time out. And then, yeah, I'm going to be using the 10, the 11, and 12. as well as 9 and
Yeah, those are all good points. My one probably point of disagreement, I guess, that I'm against both of y'all on this is the 3-horse sprawl. I think that horse is going to take money just due to the fact that it's a Mott and an IRAD horse and that it wins in that Gozilla race. And that Gozilla race has come back pretty. A lot of the horses that have run in that race have not come back to run very well. Cardiac Kid did not fire. Um, Sprawl, I don't think has raced again. Oxbridge just raced a few days ago, I think, and flopped pretty bad as the chalk. Prince of Caps regressed. So even Gozilla went on in the ran third, but beaten 7 lengths or something to that extent. So I think that horse is going to take money, and he's one that I think that race is not a. There was nothing in that race, so that's a horse that I'm probably going to let beat me. But there is a lot of ways to go in this race. So if you're already going to be 4 or 5 deep, then at 5 to 1, there's no harm in adding that horse on your ticket as well.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there. And if we're talking horses that face monsters last out, both the 4 Ghost Lore and the 8 So Union come out of that Dennis's Moment race as well. So I mean, I know a lot of people are. I don't pay that much attention to the company you keep unless it's really in like graded stakes or something. But both of those come out of some races that you can excuse being losing by 31 lengths when somebody blows out as crazy as Dennis's Moment does. So it makes the losing margin and the fig that was attained there a little less bad because okay, obviously you're not catching the winner. The race, it was two very separate races within a race. So, albeit, I want to be deep in this race. I want to be pretty spready. Some Hillbilly Deluxe that Josh had mentioned there as well. And I think I think I'm like, like 10 deep or something as an ABC structure here. I think you want a lot of this race. I want a lot of horses in here. And, I want to try to.
you're gonna want to talk a little bit less. So yeah, I mean, to kind of tack on to Pack's point, this is going to be one of those races where it's going to be the 11th race on the card, and my biggest opinion in the 10th race would have just missed. So I'm going to try and chase with an exacta box here with some longer prices. But like I said, like with these lightly raced horses, it's always tough, especially when a lot of them just look the same. So that's when you really got to look at the trainer stats, the the breeding, which is why, like I said, at 10, that Dam having 4 winners out of 6 starters is huge. At least for me, um, and you kind of got to narrow it down. But I think this is one of those races, like Pac said. I mean, he's 10 wide here. I don't really blame him. I mean, a lot of these horses are, you know, at least on Briz, pace figures in the mid to high 70 or speed figures in mid to high 70s. Some of them, were like a couple lengths back. Doesn't really seem like there's any real like true leader in here. So this is definitely like the definition of a spread race, especially without workout reports.
Yeah, I think this is a race where if you're playing a pick 5 or a pick 4, you probably need to take a stand in an earlier race because I think this is not the place that you want to try to single or try to get too smart and too clever. I think this is a place where you try to get your price. I know sometimes it's be contrarian and try to go skinny when everyone spreads and spread people go skinny, and that can work, sometimes. But if you can go skinny here, and you either have a tip or you're a much better handicapper than I am because this is a pretty wide open field.
Did you guys look at all at the Wood by Mile?
I have not touched it. I can flip there and take a look if you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really looked at it yet. But this is the return of Got Stormy, who's I still can't believe she won. What was it?
Uh,
7 days? 7 7 days back. Ran 7 days. Yeah, 7 days apart. Um, but I just pulled it up real quick. I know some people
what
have
race is
asked.
that,
It's going to be
Josh?
race 9 on the Woodbine card. I believe the card is in the you know
Yep,
where.
yep. I found it.
Um, so taking a quick look at it, there's a lot of good horses. There's at least 3 real classy horses. Raging Bull, Got Stormy, and
Yeah.
Synchrony. Um, funny enough, the one thing I do remember about the Woodbine Mile, especially last year, was that was the race that Oscar Performance came back after he got vanned off at the Arlington Million, and then just came back and won a really good ran a real good race and won this. And that might have been the start of our Van Doff angle. I'm not sure that we like to talk about, but he was definitely Van Doff in at the Million and came back and um but yeah, there's one interesting horse in here that um I kind of want to talk about a little bit, which is Awesome Tank. Um, so Awesome Tank came here from it looks like Great Britain. Ran Great Britain and France. Ran in the Beverly D and ran second to Sister Charlie, who absolutely nobody was beating that day in the Beverly D. Um, but got a pretty big speed figure on the Briz scale, a 104 here, um, and pretty much that puts her like right in here. So I don't know what was the buyer on that race.
Byron came back 99, which in this field is you're there. That's the range you need to be. 'Cause at 99 to 105 range is probably where this will finish up. Also says something about Awesome Tank. That was one that kind of jumped off the page at me. If you look at some of the companies she kept, back in Europe, she was second to My Sister Nat and the Prix Bernard de Targon. And My Sister Nat is a monster, and also ran versus some horses like Baroness is in there. Who else? Anna Norinium. So traded wins with Anna Norinium. We're talking some real legit horses, some legit world class horses in here. Yeah, and she's getting a massive cutback in distance. So I don't know why they tried to stretch her out, and that at last maybe it was just the money in the Beverly D. But she in Europe she was ran pretty much a mile and an eighth horse, and then they went to the 316. So I realize it's not that much further, but still normally different horses that milers can tend to stretch out to a mile and an eighth. That mile and 316s tend to be those mile and a quarter horses. But and not to cut you off, Josh, but yeah, she's one that definitely is impressive to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to look around Got Stormy, because the thing about Got Stormy is pretty clearly a miler, and at least looking at this race is probably the best miler in this field. Um, so yeah, it's real interesting that they're cutting this horse back a little bit. This horse does like to show a little bit of speed. They're running this on the outer turf, right? Yeah, they're not running this on the inner turf, the new inner turf course at Woodbine. So I mean, speed has held for a little bit on the turf course, but more specifically on the inner turf. But yeah, I mean, I still think that Got Stormy is definitely gonna be the horse to beat here, probably. But I think the horse, if I was gonna look at another horse that I'm gonna try and beat her with, it's gonna be Awesome Tank.
Yeah, that's a really interesting horse. Like I haven't looked at this race at all until just now, and I'm not a Woodbine player, so I'm not really familiar with how the track typically plays. If you put any stock into the Brisnet bias statistics, it looks like it's pretty, off the pace favoring. 6% of races have gone wire to wire, going 8 furlongs on the turf, but they're not coming from more than, on average 2 to 3 lengths back. So I think that really fits in with the run style that the 6-horse Awesome Tank showed last time out. That horse is really interesting. I don't have morning lines on this form, so I don't know what kind of price she's at. But at any kind
8 to
of
1.
yeah, that's an incredible price. If you get half of that, I would probably take it. I got Stormy. You're right, as the horse to beat here. I was all over this horse, a couple starts back. I was liked her in the 4-star Dave. Um, I just think she's a super game horse. But again, without morning lines, that last effort, I'm pretty sure that was a track record for Saratoga or pretty close to it. Track was fast that day. I mean, she romped, as looked incredible. But you have to wonder, coming back now, if that took a little bit out of her. She ships up north to Canada now. Um, she'll certainly, would not be a horse I'm not going to use, but it's a horse that, if you're trying to get around her, it sort of feels like maybe last time was the time you wanted to have her. If she regresses here, she's not that far ahead of this competition, even if she doesn't regress very much. I have no interest in either of the challenges. Raging Bull, I don't know how this horse has 5 wins, because it feels like every time I bet him, he runs second. Yeah, the other Chad Brown horse, Luis Contreras is up. That should probably tell you everything you need to know. Watch, he'll beat me now because I said that, just like you with Lucas. But I guess the other horses I might look at a little bit would probably be the 4 Synchrony. I love this horse. I'll be the first to admit I'm probably a little biased, but I've been on this horse forever. You get the best West Coast turf jockey and one of the best turf jockeys in the country with Flavia Pratt to come up to ride this horse. The King Edward was really impressive. This horse just always runs her race. His race, excuse me. He is 6 now, so there is some concerns as to how much better can he get, and he probably will need to run his maybe not his best, but at least his race too bad. He wants to really compete here. Has always seemed a very, very solid grade 2 to grade 3 type, but just a cut below grade 1 status. But that's a horse that I'm interested in if the price is right. He's proven over the local track, which is always a bonus. And then I guess speaking of horses over the local track, whenever I go to a course I don't typically play, or there's a big, Pennsylvania Derby, Woodbine Mile type race that attracts a bunch of shippers. You can typically find one horse for the course, local horse that's a standout, and I think that's the 3-horse Silent Poet here. The horse is out of 7 starts, has 5 wins in 2 seconds at Woodbine. He's undefeated at the distance. The horse has done it on the synthetic, has done it on the turf. The horse has a ton of speed and is going to be your pretty much unquestioned leader. I don't think the 1-horse El Tormenta is going to be able to keep up with him if he tries. So this, bias statistics, for whatever they're worth, on Brisnet do seem to suggest that wiring races is fairly common. But this is a horse who knows how to win and has a couple of races at this track, in recent history. You now get third off the layoff, 34-year-old, and this horse wouldn't need much improvement on a speed figure scale to really be competitive. It would need to improve, but not necessarily a ton. So this is a horse that I would probably look at if I'm really going to look towards away from the more obvious names, that the 3 Silent Poets, and then perhaps the horse we already mentioned with Awesome Tank, 2 I might look at a little bit.
Yeah, just to add on to that with Silent Poet, your horse ran 100 Buyer last out. That fits with this field. I don't necessarily know about needing to improve. Horse has won at a mile. The thing is this more of a 6.5, 7 for a long horse, or is this a real true miler? But yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Silent Poet here at 15 to 1 on the morning line, definitely a horse that I would imagine with local connections will be bet down more than that, but definitely one you want to use. And I 100% agree with you with Synchrony. everything you said was spot on. Horse that I really love, horse that I've loved for a long time, horse I just have kind of a soft spot for. One interesting stat with Synchrony is the fact that when Stidham ships to Woodbine, he is crazy live. He is 4 for 7 this year, 57% shipping in. So he doesn't ship into play. I would imagine that Synchrony is probably loaded for bear. And I would imagine, Synchrony is a horse that at 6 to 1 on the morning line, I think there's a lot of value there. Try to get around, get Stormy.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you kind of shit on Luis Contreras there a little bit, but he's actually pretty good. He's actually pretty decent at at Woodbine, but he is not. He's more of a all-weather jock up there. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping that these Chad Brown horses take money. I mean, man, if Raging Bull takes money, like I'm going to be all over this race because I don't think Raging Bull has a chance in this. I think that he wants longer. I mean, I just think that he's more like mile and a quarter, mile and the eighth, type of horse. And I don't think, I mean, there's enough pace in here for a Got Stormy or a Synchrony, I think, to come off the pace and win. But I don't think that there's enough pace for a prototypical Chad Brown. Hey, I'm gonna make one run and try and win off from way off the pace type horse. And cocky Joel Rosario thinking he can win from 30 lengths off. I just don't think that this is gonna really work out well for Raging Bull, and even less for Made You Look. I don't really care for that horse much. But yeah, I mean, you guys kind of touched on Synchrony, Got Stormy, Awesome Tank, and I think, like you said, Silent Poet's probably the local horse that I'm gonna want to use here. I will mention that El Tormenta does have. I'm pretty sure this is the leading Woodbine rider, Europa Rosa da Silva, aboard. So something to keep in mind. But did finish second to Silent Poet last time out. So I think that in this kind of race, Got Stormy is probably going to be my top pick. But I'm really interested to see the kind of odds we get on this 6 horse Awesome Tank. I mean, you said the line was like 8 to 1. I mean, if we're getting like 5 to 1, like I think that's definitely that territory course. Um, I'm definitely going to be in on this 6, the 5, and a little bit of the 4 if I'm gonna be playing something.
Yeah, I agree. So one horse we didn't talk about that I kind of want to get your thoughts on is the two Luke Cullen. This is a horse that's beat me twice since coming off a year layoff, but the horse has been keeping some pretty good company. I mean, it hasn't really had the toughest test this year, but you don't have to look that far back to see the horse was beaten a length and a half to Robert Bruce, then ended up getting beat fairly in hand by Synchrony, Arklow, and Zulu Alpha, which is ironic because I have the T-shirt. Um, then the horse ended up just stomping Rocketry. Okay, whatever. The horse was beaten a neck to Yoshida and actually beat Bricks and Mortar. Granted, this is 2017. This is a horse that has some, clearly some soundness issues. But it seems like when this horse is right, this horse could be very talented. So this is one that Saez actually ships in to ride this horse. It looks like McLaughlin has this one in really sharp form right now. So I'm interested in this one. It has to be the right that is. I would probably need something in the 10 to 1 range, maybe 8 to 1. But this is a horse that I would not discount because has really seemed to be in awful sharp form right now.
Yeah, the horse is 8 to 1 on the morning line. I 100% agree with you here. I was wondering where Saez was because he there was a couple of mounts he could have had at Churchill, and there was a couple of mounts today that he could have had at Belmont. So interesting to see he shipped here to take this when he had some very live mounts at both those tracks. So it probably tells you that this horse is probably in good form right now. And honestly, that win the lure was quite impressive. So yeah, no, I do agree with you here that that this horse is kind of interesting at a bit of a price.
Yeah, the interesting thing is looking at the pace figures, um, at least on Briz, there's a chance that the 9 kind of guns it a little bit for the um the nine's E2 pace figure, which is on Briz, is usually the one I look at a little bit more. Um, uh, the highest, I think, of any of the rest of these horses, with the exception of Awesome Tank. So it's interesting because looking at kind of the last couple of races that this 9 has run, I wouldn't have thought that that those figs would have been as high. So um, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm kind of interested to see how this pace scenario plays out. I'm a little bit less interested in like pace scenarios for turf. I mean, you do find occasionally you get your glorious empires who get left on the lead, or your Luis Saez stealing a race because nobody else wants to grab the lead kind of thing. Um, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what how this 9 kind of plays out here out of the gate.
yeah, yeah, Josh. The 9 is 100% in here to create pace for Raging Bull to fire in too late. Um, Chad does this all the time. He'll, if he's unsure that there will be an honest pace setup, he's worried about somebody walking the dog. He'll, bring a horse in, have a local jock hop on it, and say, go. And then this 9 made you look will be full send, and I mean not necessarily full send, not quarter horsing it or anything, but will be put aggressively early to create pace for Raging Bull, because Raging Bull is a horse that's extremely pace dependent. He needs a lot of pace in front of him to set up, his real big closing kick. And I think that's what. So Chad's trying to guarantee that that happens, that Raging Bull gets the setup. Do agree with you though that I think Raging Bull really wants to go a little further than this. So yeah, I do find it. I would imagine that American Guru. I think on the time form they have American Guru as being a little faster earlier. Now again, does Hernandez want to send and try to get this horse in the lead? Who I'm not really sure, but I think the 8 American Guru, from what I'm seeing, is probably the horse that's most likely to be on the lead.
Yeah, I think the 9 is going to be. I don't think it's necessary. I think they'll be space. I think the American Guru, the 8 horse, plus the horse I mentioned earlier, the local horse, the 3, they're both going to want the lead. They're both going to be fourthly placed, and the 1 horse is going to be up there involved in the pace scenario, if nothing else. I don't see anyone really getting away with murder on the front end. The 9's probably just insurance for that. I guess I'm not a Brisnet expert. I do think those pace figures might be a little inflated for the 9 just because he's been chasing some pretty fast pace. I mean, 22 and 3, 44 and 3, going a mile at Saratoga. 44 and 3 is pretty quick. Had a couple, another 22-second opening quarter going a mile at Belmont. So I think he was 11 lengths off some of those paces, 5 lengths, 7 lengths off. I don't think this horse can make the lead. I think it's more insurance for Chad Brown, and I think some of those pace figures are a little inflated given that he was chasing after some very quick paces up front. But I do think he's more likely to be forwardly placed than his previous running lines will indicate. I'll definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, it's just it was just something that kind of stuck out to me a little bit because usually when you see horses with and this is kind of, I guess, going back a little bit more to pace handicapping. Um, this was a dirt race. When you see that big difference between the E1 and the E2, that's and it's kind of like Brisnet's version of turn time. You subtract the E2 from the E1. Usually, if you see like a difference of like 5 or 6 on something like a 7, 6, 7, 8 furlong race, um, that's usually a good indicator of a horse that's gonna, be able to make that middle move that in those types of races tend to be real strong. If you look at this horse, there's a real big disparity between those E1 and E2 two ratings. And those E2 ratings are faster than pretty much anything else in here. So it's just kind of interesting, um, because it does seem like this horse, at least from the pace figures, the pace standpoint, this horse looks like a miler. Um, like Hackett kind of said, or might have been you, Caleb. The fact that he's using a local jock, Luis Contreras, instead of shipping a jock in, probably says a little bit. There's nothing really wrong with Luis Contreras, but at Woodbine. He's definitely more known for his work on the AW than the turf. But yeah, I mean, of the two Chad Brown horses, I think I actually like the 9 more. But I still don't think if I use the 9 at all, it's probably going to be underneath kind of vertical. But it seems like at least we're all in pretty much in agreement. It seems like this is Scott Stormy's race to lose for the most part. But I mean, yeah, depending on the odds on the 6, if the odds are good on the 6, I think I'm definitely going to place a small wager on that 6 to win.
Yeah, I think the race goes through got Stormy, but even if you think that, there's some horses in here who are very interesting at some pretty healthy prices. So I don't know that I'll play this. I won't play the card. I may spot play the race. I'll at least watch it if nothing else. But that's one that if nothing else, I'll play some exactos or some doubles that are going to be through a couple of those longer price horses.
Okay, I'm just saying, if you can play Presque Isle, you can play Woodbine. All right, Woodbine is like at least a full step higher than Presque Isle. So
Maybe a half
I
step.
saw you degenning on Tuesday. Don't think I didn't see that.
Monday and Tuesday.
Oh,
It's withdrawal, no more Saratoga.
Dude, I can barely. I don't know what to do with myself. Wait, I'm not capping on a Tuesday. It's like,
yeah,
oh,
I know. Mark loves the all weather, so
yeah. The last time I did decent on any all weather track was before Hollywood closed. And
Oh
that
wow.
track was great,
he's
but since then, my all weather is.
well, cool. I mean, we got through those stakes races. We did a little bit on the Woodbine Mile. Um, any race in particular you guys are excited to place a wager on? Or are you guys just gonna be horizontal stuff?
I'll probably be pretty horizontally focused. That pick 5, I think, could be kind of juicy if you can get a price in the first leg, and slide through it. There's and then get a price in the last. I think it could pay well. Or if you can get around the favorite in the 10th, I think there's definitely some value there. Honestly, I wasn't as excited for this Woodbine Mile until I started looking at it a little bit. This is kind of a neat race. I don't really haven't looked at the rest of the card. But it's one where I think, I mean, probably Gastormy wins it, but knowing me trying to find a price, but I think there's definitely some real interesting horses in here. Awesome Tank looks really cool, and anything you're 8 to 1, I think I might just fire a little win bet and sit back and watch.
Yeah, I have to agree actually, and not to throw shade at Churchill or anything, but the race I'm most excited about is the one I just looked at. Honestly, the Woodbine Mile seems like a pretty evenly matched race. I mean, there's a couple of prices that I'd be interested to see how much support they take at the window, and might be interested to bet them in there. I mean, some good win bet prospects, some interesting horizontals that you could play. Excuse me, verticals, and I mean, it looks like they have a grade 1 that immediately follows this with the Northern Dancer Turf Stakes. I mean, so it seems like they have some pretty impressive races going on at Woodbine tomorrow. Um, in full disclosure, I'm not ecstatic with the Churchill card. Um, in general, it's 2-year-olds, juveniles and lightly raced horses, are not my wheelhouse. Typically it's not where I'm gonna make my more confident wagers in. I don't avoid them like some people are like that, but when I think it's 3 out of the 5 races in the Churchill sequence are with 2-year-olds, or maybe 2 2-year-old races and then a maiden or 2 maidens. It's a pretty, uh, it's a sequence that I don't have a. Now I'll watch the early races, and I guess the thing I'm excited is going to be to see how the track's playing. Because if we can pick up on a bias like we had today, it seems like the public money wasn't really keying in on that bias. You were still getting a lot of speed or rail that were going off at 6 and 8 to 1 that probably shouldn't have been. given the way the track played, even if they didn't win. So if we can pick up on a bias, I'd be interested to fine tune my handicapping through that lens. But there's nothing that really jumps off the page at me. Pick 5 at Churchill, so I'll probably play it pretty light. It's no Presque Isle anyway.
Wow. Yeah. One. There was something. There's some joke I was. I just. So. Yeah. I mean, we'll. We'll see how this all plays out. We'll definitely be in Discord. I think I'm going to be on most of the day playing this Churchill card. But I'll probably toss a little bit at Woodbine. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.